longer any respect for the great men other than to mark their graves with a flag. Most people today put pleasure in the forefront and forget the great deeds these deceased veterans done to make it possible for them to celebrate. Time erases all great and precious things, deeds. No longer can we call ourselves Americans with the respect these older folks held dear. held dear. We only live today to own a car and get about. Now, we'll talk about some old-time characters we had here.
Might I say amen to what you just said? Mr. James Edmondson, who is our camera operator and has been on all of our historical activities, had the foresight to record the 1982 and 1983 Memorial Day Parade. And in the 1983 Memorial Day Parade, there was a couple of bands and a couple of baton outfits and a couple of other things, followed by the children with flowers, all 5 of them. 5. And 2 adults.
Well, I would say at least there was 150 kids when I was a boy in the parade.
And I, too. When I was younger, there were at least that many. And even in Poland. But today, you have a gigantic parade with all fire truck, a convertible with officials in it, a couple of bands, a couple other marching outfits, and at the end were 5 children and 2 adults with a couple of posies in their hands. So what you've just said, I say amen, we have proof of it. Both ways. We have pictures of the parades in the old days when there was hundreds of children, and we have pictures.
Well, I would say the parade was a block and a half long.
That's right. We have pictures of those parades the way they were, what you're describing, although not as far back, but they were still very active and still thoughtful, and we have pictures of the way it is today. So, right on, as they would say.
Well, we had quite a few characters in our town in my day, especially the old-timers. One such a fellow is named Simon Spade. He was a Civil War veteran. He lost an arm in the war. The rebels shot down our flag, and he climbed the flagpole to replace it. When he was shot, he went hunting one day with Squire Wetzel, and Squire shot a rabbit, and some of the shot came close to Squire. It's a sim. He shot back and hit Squire in the back. When the rebel shot at him, he always shot back. If he got mad at his daughter or his wife, he would put them in the smokehouse, pen them in the smokehouse. He loved to pitch quail, but if he lost, he would get mad and go home. He went hunting one day on George Reese's ridge and shot one of George's turkeys. He plucked it and took it home, stated it was a wild turkey.
And where did he live?
Up where Paul Bubble is now.
That's on 522 on Market Street.
Well, didn't he? I thought he lived where, what's her name, Harriet lived.
No, that was Bill Spade.
Oh.
Another old-timer was Albert Angle, an eccentric type of a man. During the hard times in the late 80s, he kept his men busy lumbering. When all the others had shut down their operations. But then when time got good, he closed down. He planted a field of berries, and when it was ready to harvest, he never picked a berry. He also hated the fantastics that came out on New Year. He would stay in the house the entire day. A great hunter, especially birds and foxes. He had several good dogs and would give up a day's work to hunt. He also ran a planing mill and kept several men on the payroll. He finally closed the doors, even though he had plenty of work.
Sir, didn't he close, wasn't there some rumor around that his wife was unfaithful to him?
Oh, yes, that was...
And it wasn't true,
No.
but it hurt him so much that he closed his plant down and just let the business go to
That was
nothing.
one of the reasons. Now, we had another old-timer by the name of Ed Freed. He also was a Civil War veteran. He didn't allow anyone to push a wheelbarrow over his walk. He went out and tossed Bill Bickle with his wheelbarrow out in the gutter. And if a kid rode or pulled their express wagon over the walk, he put them off. He even tried to keep Charles Eigler off his walk because he had small horseshoes fastened on the heels of his shoes. He finally had a number of the kids arrested and brought them before Squire Eigler, who tossed the suit out and gave him a lecture on the rights of people have to use the walk.
Now, do you know where that was at?
No, where was
Why,
that?
well, Bill
Hackenberg,
Hackenberg
the house
has
is
his
torn down.
Oh,
jewelry
yeah,
store
where
now.
Charles Freed used to own
Yes.
that.
Now here's one on Tom Kohler. I did tell you this. Tom Kohler owned a small confectionery store, and the kids would stop for candy on their way to school. Tom would sit in the middle of the store in a captain's chair. The kids would look at the candy and tap the glass case with their penny. Tom would stay sitting and ask the kid what he wanted and how much he had to spend. If the kid said a penny, he'd say, "Just wait a little while till someone else comes."
No use getting up for a penny. Yeah, that the Mr. Freed's house was where the honor roll was during
Yeah.
World War II, and we have movies of that.
Yeah. Well, listen, there. What about the beavers? That had the.
Old Ike Beaver. Well, Ike Beaver, he was quite a character too. He was a carpenter, and he did a little farming on the side. But his wife had told he went to the store on Friday night. She was going to bake on Saturday morning. She told him to bring some sugar along home, and of course he forgot it, and he come home and didn't have the sugar. So his wife had to go up to the store on Saturday morning in order to bake to get sugar. So she was going to bake a currant pie, and she decided she'd bake the currant pie and not put any sugar in. So she told the hireling that he wasn't to touch the currant pie, that it wasn't sweetened. So Ike, when he had finished his meal, he pulled the pie over and he cut a big slab of it off and put it on his plate. And the first bite he took, he said, "I realized what was going on," he said, "but I eat it, it would have killed me."
And didn't let on that he didn't like it.
Yeah, he didn't let on. That's the type of characters we had. I can go.
Well, you talked about John Wood here a little while ago being a boxer, and he was talking to Mushheim boxer.
Yeah.
What was that all about?
Well, John Wood was quite an athlete in his day, and he was pretty well skilled in boxing. And he told about a fight he had, and Mushheim, old John Mushheim, was there at the hotel listening to this. And then John said he wouldn't mind getting in the ring with somebody. Mush said, well, he wouldn't get in the ring with anybody. He didn't. John told about knocking a fellow out. Mush said, no, he wouldn't get in the ring with anybody. He might get knocked up.
Yeah, his opponent, Mike or he. I guess it didn't matter. Well, how about John Wood during those Fantastics during New Year's Day? Wasn't he quite a character?
Oh yes, the Fantastics. They used to come in from Toxville. Old Powell Ettinger was one of them. He had an accordion. And Powell could play it, and he was a pretty good dancer too. And they got him down to the hotel, and they got him loaded pretty well. And Powell danced at the hotel. He had to stop him. He was wearing the floor out there. He had hobnails in his shoes, and he was splintering it up. They had to stop him. But John would feed him the liquor, so he'd keep on dancing.
Right.
So some of the tricks that John would do, you know.
And John sometimes hit the ball
Very hard at times, yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think he went
That's
away.
why he was sent here in the first place. From his home in Philadelphia, they couldn't control him down there, so they thought they'd send him up here to Beavertown to oversee the tannery, which was idle at the time. And of course, John lived right at the hotel. He had access to it at all times.
Well, we found out from a previous interview that they threw him out of the hotel, but because of his behavior, and then he went over and lived with Mr. Saylor, because Mr. Saylor lived in the tannery house.
Yeah, he was caretaker.
And therefore, and then Lulu Saylor and her sisters came under his scrutiny and attentions. And then, of course, he went away to get dried out and met his wife.
When he met his wife, he woke up in bed, and she was in bed with him. He asked her who she was, and she said, "Well, I'm your wife." So then they came here, and they lived in the hotel for a while, and finally they went up to where Doc Miller lived, and they boarded with Doc Miller until he had his house built.
Which is where Mrs. Freed lives now.
Ruth Norman.
Ruth Norman. And then they built her beautiful estate up here.
Yeah.
But he was quite a character. And also you mentioned something about a sawdust trail.
Well, it was customary in those days to play pranks, and especially on somebody who was a little, on the up and up side, I'd say. And
someone who's a little aloof.
Yeah, a Saturday night, and they'd go somewhere where there was had access to sawdust, and they'd fill a couple of bags. And of course, if the trail was long, they'd get a wagon and fill the wagon box. But they'd dump the sawdust from the steps of the girl home to the steps of the fellow that suited her. And that would leave a trail.
Right.
So people going to Sunday school on Sunday morning would see this trail and they would comment about it.
And
Lots of times there was nothing to it, but it was done to get some talk.
in other words, you mentioned they had a trail one time from Patch Walker's place
Patch Walker down to where Annie Bingaman lives.
and
There
well,
was
that's where he lived,
there was
right?
a girl there from Pittsburgh that stayed at Annie's, and Patch had a case on her, and so when Patch was in the courting her, why they built this trail for him.
Now, Patch at that time was living up right next to the drugstore.
No,
No,
he was living over there where
Thomas lives.
Right alongside of
Frankie
Marion
Thomas,
Stover's.
where Frankie Thomas lives.
Oh, okay, at that time.
now Rondy Walker and Rudy Coleman and I built a trail for Patch. Patch lived up alongside of where Ruth Holman lives, and Lizzie Diefendorfer lived next door.
Right.
So we went over to the Pines home and got a couple of bags of sawdust, and to camouflage it and make believe that we didn't do it, we dumped some sawdust down to where Ticky Norman lived, which is down there where Mattern lives.
Right.
And then we built this trail across from Patch's up to Lizzie Diefendorfer. And Patch got up the next morning and he was sweeping the sawdust away, and Ticky come up to work. He was clerk at the Toy Walker's store. So he said, Patch, if you blame me, he said, you're blaming the wrong guy. Patch said, shut your mouth and go to hell, he said. And
Well,
Patch, he said, what do the people think? He said, well, I don't even know this woman, Patch said. And of course, the evidence was there for Patch. Of course, he got rid of most of it before everybody saw it.